Welcome to Storytime, everybody. We are reading The Intergalactic Audacity of Becky Blueshift, and we are on episode 13. They've been captured, they've fought killer dogs that weren't really killer dogs, and now the pirates have arrived. So let's go ahead and delve right in to episode 13, Sputtering Engines and Clashing Swords. Just as Becky, Edison, and Ben exited the Colosseum, the pirate vessel touched down in the sand with the crunching of metal and screaming of civilians. "We need to find some fuel and get out of here," Edison breathed as they passed an overturned food cart with scattered fish heads strewn in the dirt. "Let's regroup back at the castle," Becky said, charging forward. It'll take Nostrellis time to find us there. Hopefully we can make it back to the Loveless before they catch us." Blue-skinned people fled in all directions, knocking each other over and paying no attention to anything beyond themselves. If they weren't all such cowards, we could easily take down Nostrellis' crew, Becky thought. We'd outnumber the pirates 1,000 to 1.
"Becky Blueshift!"
someone called.
"Becky Blueshift, Edison of the Nobel clan!"
She turned to see Captain Sebastian running up to them. "What do you want, Captain?" Becky spat. "We don't have time to hear you cry about how scared you are." The captain stopped in front of them, barring their way. He breathed heavily and kept looking over his shoulder as if a triglyptor was about to pounce on him.
"I'm sorry,"
he said between gasps.
"I should have listened to you. What ship is that? What do we do?"
"That ship was the pirates we told you about," Edison replied. "And if you had just helped us from the beginning, none of this would have happened," Becky said. Several other knights rushed to Sebastian's side, each looking more petrified than the last.
"Captain, our soldiers are fleeing before the invaders. What should we do? Should we hide?"
Sebastian turned to Becky.
"Monarch, what should we do?"
"Monarch?" Becky asked. Gotta turn the page. "Why are you calling me?" "Because you just took over their society," Edison interrupted. "You had them push Monarch into the dirt. You took the crystal from him. You told them you were in charge of the kingdom. What did you think was going to happen?" "Well, I didn't mean it literally," Becky said. "I just wanted them to listen to me and to help us." Edison rubbed his forehead. "Well, they think you're the boss now, so don't be surprised if..." An explosion echoed from the Colosseum, followed by black smoke rising on the wind. The knights quivered in fear and looked around as if trying to find a place to bury their heads.
"What should we do, Monarch Becky Blueshift?"
Sebastian asked again. Wonderful, she thought. The one civilization that would let a 13-year-old girl be in charge, and they aren't even able to fight for themselves. Becky looked around at the wide-eyed faces of men and women running for their lives. She had no desire to rule over people, let alone a failed state like this one. Even so, if they looked to her now, she couldn't leave them helpless. She had to fight for them. It's what Nitro Nobel would do. It's what Mom and Dad would do. "All right," she said, hands on her hips. "Captain."
"Yes, Monarch."
"I want you to gather all the soldiers you can and bring them to the castle." One of the knights jumped forward, eyes blinking rapidly.
"The knights are too afraid. They won't come."
"But we need them," Becky urged. The soldiers shuffled back and forth like nervous teenagers at a school dance. Blue skin on their cheeks turned slowly white, as if the blood rushed from their faces at the thought of real battle. Becky couldn't think of anything to say to help inspire the soldiers to show some courage. "Have you men ever heard the legend of Johnny Dakota?" Edison asked suddenly, stepping forward. Vacant stares filled the knights' faces. "Johnny Dakota patrolled the frontier on a wild unicorn with nothing but his six-shooter and a samurai sword," Edison continued dramatically. "He fought pirates and outlaws, even though he was afraid." He paused, looking at Becky as she shrugged. Johnny understood he needed to help people. He overcame his fear. That is what I choose to do. You can do it too. Be brave, and you'll be filled with the power of Johnny Dakota. Who's with me? Quiet mumbles answered his call. "Who's with us?" Becky shouted.
We are.
Several soldiers chorused with less than enthusiastic energy. Tell them Becky Blueshift will be fighting with them, Edison added with a nod, and that the son of Nitro Nobel will be too. Becky smiled and put her hand on her friend's shoulder. That's right. Captain, get your men now and tell them to have courage. You show them what strength looks like, and they'll follow you. Understood?
Yes, my liege,
Sebastian replied. He turned to his men.
Knights, gather everyone you can muster, and bring them to the castle. I will fight with them, as will Blueshift and Nobel. We will fight in memory of this legendary Johnny Dakota and his unicorn. Find Gretna Gore and tell him to follow me to glory.
Edison jumped forward suddenly and grabbed Sebastian's arm. And we need 10 barrels of isotope fuel taken to our ship right now. Can you have someone transport a wagon or something with that much fuel?
I know a trader who will do it for the right price,
Sebastian said.
We have reserves of our flaming oil at the castle. If Monarch Becky commands, I will order the trader to leave immediately with the barrels.
Another explosion spit chunks of rock into the air. One of the Colosseum walls collapsed in billowing dust and crumbled stone. Out of the debris cloud stepped Captain Nostrellus, flanked by Tentacle Face and 4 other grimy pirates. I order it! Becky yelled while pulling Edison and Ben toward the castle. I order it! Get the trader loaded up with fuel now, and meet us in the throne room with all the soldiers you can find. The group split up, with Sebastian and his men running in one direction, while Becky and the others darted toward the castle. Laser blasts split the air in bursts of green and yellow. A crowd already choked the entrance to the throne room, trampling each other to get inside. Make way! Becky yelled. Make way and follow me to the main hall.
It's Becky Blueshift,
An old woman pointed.
She is our ruler and protector,
Another called out. A man in a yellow hat and matching boots jumped up and down.
She is the most beautiful, wondrous, smart, poised, effervescent.
Just get inside, Becky ordered, and help each other. Stop pushing. Make room for everyone. The mob calmed down and began filling into the throne room in an orderly fashion. Several older women bowed and blew kisses at Monarch's crystal chair, though no one drew within arm's length of the royal dais. Fear of authority seemed ingrained in the people, and even though their king was nowhere in sight, they still honored him in their way. Could a people so beaten down and fearful ever be able to take control of their own planet? Becky didn't know. All eyes focused on her now, with expectancy and worry. Close the doors, Edison said, and throw that table in front of it as a barricade. 4 large blue men ran over and lifted the table, tossing it against the door with a crash. One of the table legs cracked against the wall and broke off, spinning into the air and knocking a flaming torch to the ground. Ben ran over and picked it up. What are you doing, Ben? Becky asked. This thing is covered in isotope fuel, he said, face glowing blue as the fire sparkled slightly. If I can scrape some of the oil off the tip before it burns away, I may be able to make an explosive with the right fertilizing catalyst. Ben, go hide somewhere. You'll be safe. We don't have time for you. A loud banging sound rattled the doors. Everything fell silent. Only the breathing of frightened civilians filled the throne room. Becky held tight to the glowing crystal and stared forward at the entrance. If Sebastian and his knights ran away instead of coming to help, Becky didn't know what she would do with all the people crammed behind her in the great hall. Vibrations ran through the door, along with a shudder that cracked the rock walls. Rusted hinges groaned, mixing with cries of worry from the crowd. They're here, Ben yelled. Get behind me, Becky ordered. Splinters flew in all directions as the door exploded into 1,000 chunks of wood. The table that had acted as a barricade simply fell over and clonked against the stone ground in defeat. Well, what do we got here, mates? Nostrellus's voice sneered through the smoke. Looks like these blue folks have been working with our little double crosses, I'd say. 5 pirates sauntered in like peacocks, all swagger and bravado. Tentacle Face wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, while the pirate with face tattoos leered at the scared people. A large bruise ran across Nostrellos' nose, where he'd impacted the floor when Becky had reactivated the gravity on the Loveless. It seemed like months ago, when in reality it had been less than a day before. "Ah, there you are, Blueshift," Nostrellos chuckled as a Triglador ran up and nuzzled against the pirate's boot. "I hoped to find you here. We searched half the southern hemisphere for your crash site before we stumbled on this civilization." The word civilization exited his mouth through smirked lips, as if the word were filthy. "Get out of here, Nostrellos, before we kick you and your crew back to your ship," Becky said. Laughter thundered from the pirate captain's chest as he looked around the room. He jumped forward suddenly with an angry look on his face. "Boo! Boo!" Nostrellos yelled. Half the crowd jumped in fear and almost collapsed. A grown man began crying.
Don't hurt us!
A teenage girl pleaded, still holding onto her "We love you, Monarch, Monarch" sign.
We'll do anything!
A thin man said, hands shaking. "See?" Nostrellos said, walking in a circle with his arms toward the citizens. "Even with a chipmunk voice, I can still scare 'em. I've never seen people run away so fast. You'd think we had an entire armada with us or something. A guy claiming to be the king here told us we could take all his subjects captive just as long as we didn't hurt him. These people are scaredy cats apparently from top to bottom." Becky couldn't argue. "So here's what's gonna happen," Nostrellos said, picking his massive nose. "You blue weirdos are gonna give us the kids here and let us leave without a fuss, see?" "Not gonna happen," Edison confirmed with a pointed finger. "Oh, and who's gonna stop me?" Nostrellos asked, taking a step toward Becky. "You got no ship, no gravity to turn off, and no tricks up your sleeve, do you, Blueshift? You're gonna pay for that stunt you pulled. I'll feed you the biggest tongue gun I can find, and then staple your bones to the front of the Queen." Feet planted firm, Becky stared Nostrellos down. She wouldn't beg or run or cower. If the captain wanted a fight, she would give him one, whether the soldiers showed up or not. Just then, a shout rose from behind the pirates. Captain Sebastian ran into the hall along with 4 of his knights, all armed with swords and spears.
"Stand down, foul brigand!"
Sebastian said as he waved his sword over his head. His voice cracked slightly, betraying his anxiety.
"You will leave right now before we dispatch you!"
Nostrellos stomped his foot in Sebastian's direction, and the knight jumped back like an intimidated mouse. "How many soldiers did you find, Captain Sebastian?" Becky asked, eyes locked on Nostrellos and his 4 companions.
17, my sovereign. They wait outside for my order."
"Are they ready to fight?" she questioned. Nostrellos laughed again. "Fight? I'd be more afraid to battle one of those adorable Trigladors right here." The 3-legged animal yipped happily in reply. "Tentacle Face could take 20 of them on at a time and not get tired." "Oh, I could, Captain," Tentacle Face assured. Becky pretended the men hadn't spoken. If she could inspire Sebastian to show some courage, his men might do the same, and then they could easily overpower the pirates. "Captain Sebastian," she began, "I'm here to fight beside you and your men. Edison Nobel will fight with you too. Do you have the courage to stand against these pirates?" Sweat dripped from Sebastian's forehead. He swallowed slowly and looked at Nostrellos while putting his helmet back on.
"Men,"
he said, voice firm.
"attack!"
Eyes wide, Nostrellos fell back as the knight charged with his blade. His nervous compatriots soon followed, though with less forcefulness. One of them took a weak swipe at Tentacle Face with their spear. "Ooh, Captain!" Tentacle Face cried. Nostrellos pulled his blaster from its holster, but Sebastian brought his sword down and cut the weapon in half. Now it was the pirates' turn to run in fear, as more knights poured into the hall. Gregor led 10 soldiers with him and stood beside Sebastian as his second in command. While the Blue Warriors didn't seem particularly confident, they held their ground and pushed toward the invaders. 2 of the pirates attempted to bolt for the door, while the tattooed brigand tried unsuccessfully to pull a rifle from his belt. "I'll not run away," Nostrellis said. He yanked another pistol from his thigh holster and fired, hitting Sebastian's sword and shattering the blade. The appearance of the gun sent a wave of apprehension through the knights. Their courage was weak, and it wouldn't take much for them to turn and run in the opposite direction. "I fight with you," Becky yelled, in hopes of inspiring the soldiers to be brave. She jumped forward and punched Nostrellis in his bulbous nose. Edison followed her lead and threw a cracked shield, hitting Tentacle Face upside the head. "For Johnny Dakota!" Edison cried. "Push them outside," Becky ordered. The knights followed her lead and pressed against the bandits until they had been forced through the doorway. Even the crowd followed, seeming less afraid than they had been minutes before. The pirate with the tattoos stumbled down the steps before finally managing to extricate the rifle from his belt. He pointed it at Sebastian and fingered the trigger. "For Johnny Dakota!" Edison repeated as he charged the pirate. Just as the buccaneer pulled the trigger, the son of Nobel broadsided the man and slammed him against the wall. The 2 of them struggled for a moment, rolling around the floor like children. "You think you got us cornered, eh?" Nostrellis shouted. "Not by a long shot!" He reached down and pulled Edison away from his tattooed comrade by the collar of his uniform. "God, let me go," Edison said, arms swinging in all directions. "Let Edison go, Nostrellis," Becky commanded. Fear gripped her heart as the pirate captain placed his pistol under Edison's chin. "Everybody back away, see?" he said. "I'm not so easily defeated as this. The rest of my men are on the way, and all of you are going to pay the price for crossing me and mine." No ideas came to Becky's brain. She couldn't lose Edison. He had been her best friend since before they could walk. They were a team. Without each other, the Blueshifts and Nobels wouldn't have accomplished a quarter of their exploits. Becky would be nothing without her friend. Think, think, think. Out of nowhere, Ben ran up next to her with his usual playful smirk. "Hey, Noseface," he yelled. "You know what happens when you mix a bit of isotope fuel with the right kind of lizard fertilizer?" Ben held up a small, greasy, marble-sized brown ball. A smell of manure and gasoline wafted from the sticky orb. For a moment, everyone stared at the young man, waiting for him to answer his own question. Without a word, Ben threw the lumpy sphere at Nostrellis' face. The pirate caught the projectile easily in his right hand and looked in anger at the blond boy. "Edison!" Ben cried. "Duck!" "Ah, what's this then?" Nostrellis asked as Edison pulled away just in time. The stinky ball exploded in a loud puff of blue, orange, and purple fire. Nostrellis cried out in pain and released Edison. The pirate jumped around and stomped his feet, holding his right wrist. Smoke billowed from his heavily charred hand and crooked fingers. "I told you I was going to blow your hand off," Ben shouted in triumph. "My hand! Ah, my hand!" Nostrellis moaned. His pirate companions tripped over themselves trying to slink away from their wounded captain, like rats escaping a sinking ship. "Arrest them," Becky said. "They're cowards without their leader."
"Knights,"
Sebastian called in a forceful tone.
"take these outlaws and throw them into the dungeons. For Blueshift and Nobel. For Johnny Dakota." "Yes, Captain,"
Gregor said, pulling off his lizard tail hat and using it to slap Tentacle Face across the cheek. The pirate grimaced, but made no attempt to fight back. Outnumbered and outmanned, the crew of the Queen Alala Baba Yagal tossed their few remaining weapons into a pile and raised their arms in surrender. "Ah, my hand!" Nostrellis continued as Sebastian grabbed the pirate captain by his trench coat.
"We have them, your highness,"
Gregor said.
What shall we do?
Have courage, Becky said. Then throw them in the dungeons or whatever you have here in the castle. And bring us some food. I don't know about you, but I am starving. And that's the end of episode 13. Tomorrow we will read episode 14, Return of the King. As always, if you want to get a copy of the Intergalactic Audacity of Becky Blueshift, book 1, feel free to go to stephenhuman.com, check it out. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, go to YouTube or just here on social media. They are all here. Grab the kids, sit down and enjoy, and I will see you tomorrow for story time.